All right, everybody, and welcome back. I know it's been a while. I apologize, but some things came up that took priority over our little minion buddy here. But I'm back to help and see how far we can get him along. There's a couple things we're going to make sure that we have. We have our reference, our body, our hand, our eyes, mouth. We still have our reference sphere here, which hopefully you haven't deleted yet. If not, you can go ahead and recreate another one. We also have our side body and our hand. I currently have everything smoothed out, but we can open these up because we're going to want to work on these in their rough mode to be able to get to where we need it to be. All right. So if you don't have your sphere still, go ahead and create one. We're going to want to have it set up like this, radius of 1, subdivision of 14 and 14. And if we go to the x-ray, it should still be in there from our arm that we were using as a reference. And what we're going to do for the leg is the exact same thing we did for the arm, except it's going to be a little more complicated because of the way that we have the layout. So we're going to take our sphere and we're going to rotate it back. Notice that it's on its side. So you're going to want to rotate this back around to being flush. And then we're going to go to our front perspective and move this back down to where the leg is. Now I've switched on x-ray. This will be useful just to kind of get this into position. But it's really not something we're going to use in a moment because we'll want to be able to see everything that we have going on. So I'm going to set this here. And then I'm going to go to the bottom view. If you don't have one, you can create one really easy. And from here, we're going to zoom in and we're going to look at the bottom of our body. We'll go back to non-X-ray here. And what you'll see is by placing that there, we have a nice lineup of our two parts. We have a line going through the center. We have a line that will line up somewhat with the sides. We're basically splitting in half here. And you can see that we're close to what we're doing. Now, we don't have to be exact with this. What we want to be is round. That's the whole purpose of having this. This isn't really to lock into the sphere. The idea is to lock in something that looks round so it's easier for us to sculpt with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide this for a moment. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to delete a few faces. So I'm going to select up and over. Oh, let me make sure first that I have my camera-based selection on. You want to make sure you do that so you're not deleting anything above his head. And we're going to go 3 to each side and across like so. Just go ahead and hit delete. And now your faces are gone. We can select the sphere again and bring it back in. Now again, the sphere is really going to be just for reference. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our vertices using the move tool. Just kind of glide them into place based off of the points that we have here. Again, these don't have to be perfect. I don't mind that extra one being on the side there. And I'll bring these up and over. Like so, and notice that we have a couple extras, and that's okay. Like I said, the goal here is to really create something round more than it is to match up the geometry. Let's see, and I'll come back around this way. And this will give me this extra one here on the side. I'm going to kind of line that up with that center line to give us something to work on here. And then bring this one up and over a little bit. And there you go. Not too bad. Doesn't have to be perfect again, like I said. We're going to go ahead and hide this now. And we can see we have a fairly decent circle. So what we're going to want to do is now we can take it, look at it, and let's flesh this out a little bit better to just kind of, you know, create a little more round without having this sphere there, to kind of create something that looks as round as we can get it. And also smooth if possible. This here, see, this moved off the line, so I'm going to want to move that back down. This one's back a little bit too much. And you can go ahead and try to do this symmetrically. If you choose to use the mirror tool, that's fine too. Using the mirror along the Z should be able to do this on both sides equally, so it looks even better. I'm going to bring this one in just a smidge more here. And that's not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and select my edge, double click, and it should select all of it because we haven't deleted anything or moved anything. So I can go back here, go into my front perspective, zoom in down here, and I can go ahead and I can extrude, again going back to the world, pulling this down, and then taking the scale and scale it into itself by going directly to the box. And that'll give me a nice starting point where the leg meets the body. So we can actually see that in perspective a little bit better. You can actually see here that we've basically created a small little connection. That'll allow us space to move these others and to allow us, once we smooth, to do that. So let me extrude this down a little bit further and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to extrude again. Go back to the world. Go back into my front view. And drop that down to about where his foot should be. Now I'm going to taper this in just to kind of give it a little more of a leg feel. And like that. And hit enter. Select a different tool. And there we go. Now if I hit 3 and smooth this out, we have a pretty decent leg. And again, we'll make the one on the second side by mirroring it. So for right now, we're really just looking for a balance. Again, we want to look to see how they look with a little bit next to each other. Excuse me. So that we can get a sense of perspective on it. But it's not really necessary to have both sides yet. Okay, so we can actually tweak these a little more if we wanted to. We can go ahead and move some of these vertices down. We can tweak these depth-wise. We can make this a little smoother. Now that we have some connection, we can bring these down a little bit if we chose to. Here, we can bring some of these out to smooth. Another thing that we might want to do, yeah, there's that one there. Bring that one down just a little bit, just to smooth that angle a little bit more. The same way that your hip smooths into your thigh. Okay, another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead now, since I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and go into my front view, and I'm going to create the knee. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my object mode. I'm going to hold shift and insert edge loop to choose my options. And I'm going to reset the tool and make sure that we're set up relative distance. And I'm just going to go ahead and click in right about where his knee should be. Now this is probably going to be lower than I want it, but I can adjust this later. So I'm going to put one in the middle, one on the top, and one on the side. And that'll give me nice 3 joints to work with later on when we're talking about it. It's the same thing we did up here with the elbow. We did the same thing for the leg. All right, so we have a good start there. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. So next thing we're going to want to do is even this up, and we're going to want to join the body. It's actually really easy to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to object mode. We're going to delete this side of the body. Now, if you've already made the hand, you can go ahead and leave that just as it is. We can take this and go to Mesh and Mirror Geometry, check our options. And we're going to want to merge with the original, merge the vertices along the -X. If you reset, make sure you do that beforehand. Your -X is going to go this way. So that's what we're going to want to do. The +X will go this way. So go ahead and click Mirror. And you can see here, we have a much more together minion. Okay, I'm just noticing that I have a little bit of an error down here, and I'm not exactly sure what caused it, but it's a really easy fix. We can come down and just focus on the bottom here, and I noticed that these vertices for some reason all came together. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete these at the bottom and extrude out from the legs again. I still have my camera base selection on, so I'll go ahead and turn that off. I can take this edge and extrude it down. Now we could also mirror if you'd like. So let's go ahead and do that just to say that it's on there, the reflection. We're going to do it at X. There we go. And now we're going to edit mesh, extrude, shift it back to the world, and drop it down. All right, about there. And then do the same thing with this. Edit mesh, extrude, switch to the world, and drop it on down. These don't have to be exact right now because they are going to just go inside the boots. So we can do that. Switch back to object mode. And there we have it. A happy little minion. Okay. And again, we've got things set up, so this should be pretty easy to rig. Now, one of the things that we've looked at with our minions in the movie and in the individual stuff is that their uniforms are pretty tight to them. So there's two ways you could do this. You could either do this as jeans, or you could do it as part of their body. So for the sake of this, I'm just going to attach it and make it part of this body. I'm going to go back to the front, and I'm going to go to X-ray mode again so that I can see what I'm selecting. I'm going to choose my faces, and again, since I have things set up to show outside and select other places, let's see, that's not bad. Have my mirror select. I need to come through and make sure. I'm going to come through. I'm going to turn my mirror select off, actually. Never a big fan. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go back to my perspective and pick up any that I've left off. It's easiest to do without the X-ray. So I've selected patches based on where his genes are. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and select the ones that I missed here. Put it around, did the same ones over here. It's always best to look before you do something next, which is going to be a simple duplication of these. We can get rid of those. See, there's one more there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to this body and keep this in the same group, but I'm going to go ahead and take it and separate it so that I can work with it and give it textures on its own and work with it separately. So let's go ahead and make sure that I got enough of the body. Go back to X-ray. Yeah, and that's right about there. Now, of course, we can always come up. That's why I left this ridge here. So it'll give me something to work up to, and then I can bring these up and work with it on their own. So I'm going to go ahead and change back to X-ray, and I'm going to go to Mesh, and I am going to edit Mesh, and we are going to come down and we are going to duplicate the faces. We're going to check the options, make sure. We're going to separate the duplicated faces from the body. The offset, we're going to leave it at 0. We're going to click duplicate. Now what that's done is that to give us the surface 1 and surface 2. Our surface 2 in this group is actually what we're going to use for our genes. So now we can attach this really close to the body by simply grabbing it and sizing it up just a little bit. Now that'll keep it working close to the body, keep it at the shape that we were having. Now, of course, you can adjust the shape later and give us something to work with. So just really quick, so I can see this differently, I'm going to assign a new material. I'm going to pick a quick Lambert, and I'm going to... let me go ahead and delete the history here. There we go. I'm going to go to my Lambert 10 here and choose my color. And I'm just going to pick something blue that resembles the jeans. Now you'll notice that the legs are not in line with these jeans at the moment, and that's okay. Like I said, that's stuff that we can clean up here after we get the jeans and the body going. Once we smooth these out, you'll be able to tweak the legs, because again, the legs aren't really something that we're going to see. They're going to be buried underneath there, and then they're going to go into the jeans. It's really more for the rigging later that we're going to have those. So here we have a simple little mesh loaded up. We can add some depth to it if we wanted to. Because they are jeans, what I would do is I take the whole thing, extrude it out. Again, select the world. I'm going to scale it out a fraction. There we go. And now I've got a little depth to the jeans. Okay, and if you go back to the one, you can actually see it there. If we go to the smooth, we can see how it edges out nicely. And again, these are things that we can adjust later to tweak it out, give it a much better feel. Now, to get the straps, there's a couple different ways you can do that as well. You can either draw them out with polygons. You could do it one way. But the way that I found is going to work pretty nice for this experiment is to go to the side. And I'm going to go back to my rough shaded, and I'm going to choose, and I'm going to create, where is it? Create an arc tool, and I'm going to use a 2-point circular arc. I'm going to check my options here. I'm going to set it up to be 8 sections. I'm going to leave it at 3, which is going to give it a 3-point curve instead of just the one linear. I'm going to click OK. So what you'll see is this will turn this into a target. So I'm going to choose probably right in the center of this square here, and it'll create a square, and at the center of the opposite square on this side. Now, what you won't see at first is where this is going. We've got our curve here. If we hit enter, we actually have created a curve. Oop, there we go. Where'd it go? And we can move it out here. Okay, now, will it line up perfectly with what we're looking for? Possibly, let's see, but we can always adjust it later. So we're going to rotate this around. I'm going to rotate it there, and I'm going to drag it into place using the up and down. And I'm going to go back to my front. And I'm going to scale this in some. Kind of line it up with that top. Move it up a little bit more. Now this doesn't have to be exact again. What we're really doing is really just simplifying the ability for us to make the curve. So I'm going to go back to my perspective, see if that's lining up close to what I want. And it does. That's pretty good setup there. So we're going to click on this curve. Oop, sorry. And we're going to duplicate it. And we're just going to slide it right down. Bring it over. And go back to our front. And notice how it sticks out a little bit here. And we can see if we want to set it up to match that other one, we can. Set it up right about there. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to end up using this as polygons. So now that we have our two curves, what we can do is select both of them, go to our surfaces, and we're going to loft the surface. And check our options here, and just click loft. Now what's happened is we've created a surface out of these two curves. So we can go ahead and delete the curve, and that'll leave us our lofted surface. Now what I want to do first is I want to go ahead and convert this. We're going to modify, convert NURBS to polygons. And what that'll do is that will give us a polygon surface that matches up with our shoulder. Oops, sorry. much easier than drawing this on its own. And we can scale this in, we could bring this in a little bit, but I'm going to add some body to it by going back to the polygons and edit mesh, extrude. You can go back to the world because that's where I like to work the best. And drag that out a little bit, bring it up a little bit. And we're good. And there we have what I think is a pretty successful curve. Again, we're going to assign this. Oop, hey now. There we go. We're going to assign this our Lambert 10, just because we, again, want to keep the colors pretty clear. We're going to take this. We're going to move back to the front. Notice how we have a nice little dip here. And of course, we can duplicate any of these to clean up. So let's go ahead and go to the X-ray. All right. And we can kind of see how this comes down into the button. So we can come up and choose these vertices. Move them up a little bit if we want to. And we could bring up those corners a little bit. So we can bring that up to line up with our shoulder. So we can choose these here. Bring that in a little bit. Round that off. And again, not perfect, but not bad. Bring this down a little bit. Might be a little thicker than we like. But again, that's going to be something that I'm going to want to sculpt afterwards. After I get rid of the original and then just kind of tweak it on its own. So we'll go back to the X-ray mode. And now we have our NURBS to poly. We can take this and we can still, since our center is still pivoted here, we can go ahead and duplicate special and scale on the -1. Duplicate it. And now we have a minion complete with blue jeans.